Hello friends, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. My name is Chwendo. If you are new here, you are welcome. If you have been a returning viewer, you are also welcome. Today's tutorial I'll be sharing with you guys how to make this beautiful gown. It is inspired by this beautiful model and an Instagram vendor. It is very simple. If this is what you're interested in learning, please keep on watching. So guys, I have on top of my table 3 yards of crepe, and that is what I'm going to be using for this tutorial. I guess it should be enough because crepe comes by 60. Okay, now guys, if you're following what I'm doing, go ahead and open up your fabric and then place it on top the table. So your fold should be into 4 equal places. I folded mine, and that is what I have on top the table. Okay, so I'm going to open up the sides so that you can see I have it being folded into 4 equal parts, and this part I am right now is folded into 4 as well, but it's going to be the center fold. Now guys, I'm going to use my brown paper to fold this, okay, because the camera is so narrow that you might not see how I folded this clearly well. Okay, so now I'm going to take this as the width, and then this is going to be the length, and I'm going to fold like this. Can you see? Going to fold and then fold again. So this is how I folded my fabric, which I have on top the table. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this paper, and we start working on our gown. So guys, remember, this is the center fold. What I'm going to do is, from the top of my fabric, I'm going to come down by 1 inch and make a horizontal line. Now this horizontal line is going to be the baseline, which is equally the shoulder points. Now I've made my mark, and next thing I want to do is bring in my tape measure, and I'm going to place it on this shoulder line and then mark down to the bust point. Now my shoulder to the bust point is 11 inches. I'm going to mark. Now, still leaving my tape on the shoulder line, I'm going to mark down to the waistline, 18 inches. And then still leaving my tape on the shoulder line, I'm going to mark down to the hip points, 26 inches. Now I'm going to adjust my fabric so that you'll be able to see what I am drafting out, because my table is very small, you guys. So I'll mark down to 26 inches, and then I'll be making use of the length of my fabric for the length of my gown. Okay, because actually the length of my gown is 58 inches, but I'm going to need 2 inches for folding the hem. Okay, so after that, I'm going to draw my lines across just like this, and next thing I want to do is go ahead and mark out my shoulder and equally the length of my sleeve. Okay, this is a cut together gown, so I'm going to be marking out 23 inches from the center fold. Okay, which is going to serve as my shoulder and the length of my sleeve. Okay, now from this 23 inches mark, I'm going to come down by 11 to 12 inches for my slip opening, and then add 1 inch for sewing allowance. Okay, now I'm going to connect these points together, and then next thing I would want to do is move over to the shoulder line, and I'm going to mark out the neck width and the neck depth. Okay, so we are going to be marking out the back neck first. So I'm going to use 3.5 inches for the width, and then for the depth I'm going to make use of 1 inch. So I've marked it out, and I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect the points, just like you can see me doing like this. And then after that, I'm going to take my tape down and mark down to the neck depth of the front. Okay, so for now I'm going to make use of 8 inches for the neck depth of the fronts, but later on I'm going to take that down a bit. Okay, so let's manage this for now, and I'm going to come over to the bust point line, and I'll divide my bust circumference by 4, mark it out, and then add 1.5 inches for ease allowance. Okay, because this is a free gown. And then I would add 1 inch for sewing allowance. So in total, I'm adding 2.5 inches extra, both for ease allowance and the sewing allowance. Now I'll go down to the waistline and divide my waist circumference by 4. I would mark that out and then add 2.5 inches for both my ease allowance and the sewing allowance. Now I'll go down to the hip line, divide my hip circumference by 4, mark it out and then add 2.5 inches. Okay, now whatever it is that I have on the hip points, I'm going to take it down straight to the hemline. Okay, now you can see I'm trying to connect all my body shapes together, and then I'm going to take my fabric upwards so that you guys can see the hemline. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and input what I have on the hip line on the hem and then connect the points together. Okay, so this is actually simple, and you guys, please, at this point, if you haven't hit on the subscribe button, please subscribe and turn on your post notifications so that you get notifications like this whenever I upload a new video. Okay, now once I'm done connecting all these lines, I'm going to move over to the bust points. And on the bust point line, I'm going to come down by 2 inches and then connect it into the armhole depth, just like this. Now this will help the seam line of that area to relax properly well, okay, without having too much curves. Now after that, I'll move over to the shoulder line, and on this shoulder line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope and then connect it into the neck width. Okay, now guys, after connecting the shoulder slope, I'm going to now add up my shoulder sewing allowance of 1/2 inch, as you can see me doing like this. And after that, I'm going to connect it into a slanty line. Now once I'm done with all of this, we are done with the drafting of our gown and we are going to cut it out. Now to cut out, first of all, we are going to cut from the back neckline, as you can see me doing like this. And from there, go ahead and cut out your shoulder sewing allowance and then cut out your remaining part of the gown. Now guys, as you can see, I am done cutting this out, and the next thing I want to do now is move over to the waist points. Now from this waist point, I'm going to come up by 1 inch and then place a notch. This is for me to locate the point I'm going to fix in my drawstring. Okay, now the drawstring is meant to be on the waistline, but if you leave it on the waistline, it's going to be a little bit down. So you need to come up at least by 1 inch to fix in this drawstring so that it can relax properly well on your waistline. Okay. Now after this, I'm going to remove one piece of this my gown, and then I'll be left with one piece which is going to be for the front. Now what I will do now is arrange it properly well, making sure that each of the sides and the shoulders aligns. And then next thing I want to do is mark out my neck depth for the front. Okay, now for the front neck depth, I'm going to use 3 inches. Remember, I used 1 inch for the back. Now I'm going to use 3 inches. So what I did was to remove the 1 inch. Now remember that this 1 inch is for the neck depth of the back. So I'll take away the 1 inch and then go down to 2 inches, making it 3 inches for the neck depth of the front, and then connect it into the neck width. Now, still leaving my tape like that, I'm going to go down to 9 inches and place my mark. Okay, now this would be for the V neck around the front neckline. I hope you guys understand. So I'll go ahead and cut out my 3 inches mark. Now after cutting it out from the center fold of this front, I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch, and that would be for the V neckline, and then place a mark. Now after placing the mark, I'll bring in my scissors and then cut it down to the 9 inches mark. Okay, so I'm going to use my curve to connect it just like this. Can you see what I'm doing? Now connect it and then cut it out, and that becomes our front neck shape. Okay, so guys, you can see what we have. So next thing we want to do now is go ahead and cut out the facing for the front. Now it is only the front facing that we are going to be cutting out, because this our gown is going to come with a bishop collar, so the back neck doesn't need to be turned. We only need to turn the V shape around the front neckline. I hope you guys understand. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my facing using this piece of fabric. I've folded it into two, and then I'm going to make sure that my front piece aligns properly well. Okay, making sure that the folded part aligns with the folded part of my front piece. So you can see I'm trying to arrange it, and after that I'm going to cut out my facing. Okay, now to cut out my facing, I'm going to first of all, after placing it, cut out the neck. After cutting out the round neck, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the shoulder. Okay, so just gently do it as you can see me doing like this. I'm going to cut out the shoulder, and after that I'm going to cut out the v-neck, and then I would remove my front piece. Okay, so that I will determine the wideness of the facing that I want. That is if you want your facing to enter into the shoulder and the entire neckline. Okay, so I'm just using this as an example because I want my facing to be on just the V shape area. I hope you guys understand. So I'm still going to trim this off. I'm just only trying to use this to show you that you can actually cut your facing like this. Okay, so now because we are adding up a bishop collar to this, we don't need all the entire facing. Okay, so we only need this particular side that I just cut out, the V shape area. So I'm going to place it on top the front of my gown, and then making sure that the right sides are facing each other, I'm going to move over to my sewing machine and stitch all around the V neck shape. Okay, just like this, and then weave the rough edges and turn it over to the wrong side. Now after turning over to the wrong side, I will top stitch around the small neck area. Okay, now I am done with that. Next thing I want to do is bring in the back piece and then fix in my shoulders. So I'm going to go stitch this using 1/2 inch, and then you guys, this is what we have. You can see I've joined the shoulders together. I've also turned the neckline of the front, and you can see what we have right here. Now guys, we are going to move over to the waistline, and remember the 1 inch above the waistline that I placed a notch. I'm going to connect a straight line from one end to the other end. After doing it on the front part, I'm going to repeat it to the back part. So as you can see, that is what I'm trying to connect. Now you guys, I'm going to fixing a casing which I'm going to use for my drawstring on this line. Okay, so I'm trying to mark out a straight line so that when I'm fixing in the casing, I'm going to follow this line to do that. Okay, so guys, as you can see, I've gone ahead behind the camera to cut out this strip of fabrics. I'm going to use one for my casing, and I'm going to use one for the loop, and you can see they are long enough to go around the waistline of my gown, and the loop should be long enough to go around my waistline. Okay, now what I'm going to do next is to the back piece of my gown. I'm going to from the side go in by 1 inch on both sides. Okay, and then to the one I use to form my casing, I'm going to divide it into two equal halves. Okay, and one part of it I'm going to pin it up to the back, and to the other remaining one I'm going to later share it into two parts and fix it to the front. Now guys, I'm doing this way because I feel like this is the easiest way to go about it. Just imagine after sewing the entire dress, then you want to do this, it will be very difficult for you to do. Okay, so if you want, you can actually leave this casing for your drawstring, After sewing the entire dress, you go ahead and sew it into the round waist of your garment. Okay, but for me, I want to do mine like this because I feel like this is the easiest way to do that. Now guys, I am done sewing this in, and this is what I have. Now, you guys, if you take a look at this gown, you will notice that there is something like pocket in front. You guys, that isn't a pocket, okay, but we are going to form it right now. So what I did was to locate the center of the front, and from the center I went in by 3 inches. Now from this 3 inches mark, I determined how wide I want that to look. Okay, so I'm making use of 5 inches. So you can see I'm trying to outline the points. So these are the place I'm going to fix in that. Now I have my piece of fabric which I'm going to use to form it. Now I'm going to fold it into 4 equal parts, as you can see. And first of all, from the folded edge, I'm going to come down by 3 inches. Now I want the length, that is the height, to be 2.5 inches, but you can see I use 3 inches because I'm going to use the half an inch to sew this into my gown. Okay, now the wideness is 5 inches, but I went ahead to cut out 6 inches because I need half an inch on both sides to turn this to the right side. So guys, after marking this out, I went ahead to cut it out, as you can see. Now I'm going to place in paper stay into this to make it stronger, and then stitch the side seams. Now guys, after sewing in the side seams, I'm going to turn it over to the right side and go stitch it into my gown. Okay, now you can see I am done sewing this in, and this is what we have. Now guys, we are moving over to the sleeve, and from the neckline of my sleeve, I'm going to come down by 13 inches and place a mark. Okay, now I'll repeat the same thing to the other side. Now this mark is where I'm going to place in a strap, which I'm going to use for my sleeve turn up. Now you can see I've gone ahead to mark out the 13 inches for the other side, and then I'm going to use these pieces to form the strap. Okay, so the strap is 3 inches in height. Okay, and the length is 18 inches. So I'm going to go stitch this on both ends and then divide it in the middle and turn it over to the good side. And now guys, I'm going to now go on and fixing the strap just like this. Can you see? And you guys, this is how it's going to look like. So I'm going to do this for the one part of my sleeve and repeat the same thing for the other side. Now after doing that, next thing is to hem the down part of my sleeve. So I'm going to go with the rough edges and then turn it just once and stitch down the hem of my sleeve. Now once I'm done with this, I'm going to go on and stitch the side seam of my gown. Okay, now when you are stitching the side seam, remember we have a slit by the side of this gown. Okay, now what you are going to do is from the hem, you are going to mark up to 25 inches and place a mark. Now on this mark, you are going to use a tie stitch to hold it down right there. Okay, and that is where the slit is going to end. Now if you are coming from the upper part, you are going to measure down to 35 inches, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is bring in my hemming tape and then place it underneath the seam allowance, and then use my steam iron to hold it in place, and then loosen up the side stitches. Okay, so you can see I'm going to go repeat the same thing for the other side, and that is how to get your slits, you guys. Now from here we are going to move over to the front so we can sew the casing for the front. Now remember the front casing, I divided it into two, and when I was sewing in the back, I left about 2 inches on the side before sewing in the back. So for the both side of the back, I'm going to bring in each of the front casing, and then I will stitch using half an inch. Okay, so I have already stitched it. Now I'm going to make sure I open up my seam allowance by the side, and then ensure that I follow the straight line to pin it up until I get to the center front of my front. Okay, I hope you guys understand me. So this is what I am trying to do here. So I'm going to pin it up until I get to the middle of the front for one side, and after doing that for this side, I'm going to go repeat the same thing for the other side. Okay, so you guys, you want to do this gradually, please do not rush. And when you are doing this, ensure that your dress is not folding. Okay, just make sure that you keep your hands straight. Okay, now once I'm done with this part, I'm going to repeat the same thing to the other side. You can see the way I placed my hand inward, and I'm trying to make sure that I get this in a straight line. Okay, now after pinning this up, I'll move over to my sewing machine and sew the edges. So guys, after I was done stitching this, you can see what we have. This is very neat, and I love the fact that it is on a straight line. Okay, so I'm going to now fix in my loop into this casing. So I'll be making use of this bodkin to do that. If you have your safety pin, you can make use of that. So I'm going to push it in through one side of the hole and then adjust it so that it comes out through the other side. So once it comes out, I'm going to remove my bodkin and then pull it until the both ropes becomes equal. Okay, so guys, I'm going to keep adjusting until I get what I want. Okay, so as you can see, I am done. So next thing I want to do now is go ahead and tie up the rope, the two ropes, so that they won't go right inward anymore. Okay, now guys, we are done with this, and what we are going to do next is go ahead and fixing our collar. Now we are going to be making a bishop collar for this neck. I have a detailed tutorial on my channel, how to fixing your bishop collar, how to draft and sew into the neckline. Okay, so it is very simple. You might not be seeing the detailed tutorial. I'm going to be linking it in the description, so you check it out. So what you want to do is measure your round neckline, and after measuring my round neckline, I'm going to use it to cut out my pieces, which I'm going to use for my bishop collar. So this is what I have. I'm going to sew around the upper part of my collar and the side, leaving the down part open, and after that I'm going to go ahead and bring in my gown, and then I would fold the neckline into two and notch the center. Now after that, I will equally fold my collar into two and notch the center. Now, what I'm going to do is bring in the neck of my gown and also bring in my collar and make sure that the centers are facing each other. Okay, and then I would use my pins to hold it all around the neckline. So I'm trying to hold the collar around my neckline, and once I'm done holding it in, I'm going to move over to my sewing machine and stitch around the neckline using 1/2 inch. Okay, now if I want to stitch, I'm going to start from the insides and then top stitch towards the front. So you guys, you can see this is our collar, this is what it looks like. Now guys, what I'm going to do next is hem the down part of my gown, and then after hemming the down part of my gown, I will now show you guys what we have. But before then, I'm going to also fix in my button on the sleeve and create a button hole on the strap. Okay, so guys, here is our gown. This is what it looks like. What do you think about this tutorial? Please make sure to give it a thumbs up if you love it, and share this video so that more people can get to see it. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and turn on your post notification so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Now guys, I'll definitely see you in my next tutorial. For now, bye.